Hi, everybody, 6 o'clock, I'm gonna call, hold on, I'm gonna tell this thing something over. 6 o'clock, I'm gonna call to order this meeting of the Danville School Building Advisory Committee. It's Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. My name is Clayton Cargill, I chair this board, should work on this committee. And we're gonna go around the rooms and say our names. There's nobody new, we're gonna say our name for the roll. We go this way. Doug Pascua, committee member.
Sean McNamara.
Dave
Schilling.
Tim Sandborn.
Mary Beatty.
Stacy Andrew.
Bruce Moretti. Eric Hewitt.
Sean Blackman.
Lance Horn. Dave Toll.
Katie White. Sarah Welch. Molly Gleason.
All right, everybody here, nobody new. Before we move to the agenda of the night, are there any additions or changes to this agenda? Good. Okay. Moving on, the first thing that we're gonna do tonight is we're gonna finalize our committee membership. We were gonna see if anybody else wanted to come and show up, and this was gonna be an extra opportunity from the last time when we had to zoom in because of the weather, to see if anybody else in the community wanted to come out and get their feet dirty. And then walk into the building and talk to us, and there's nobody on Zoom, there's nobody here. So I'm gonna, can we all get a consensus here that if nobody showed up, they were not interested enough to help us? And we're gonna move on from admitting new members. Okay, if we can get a consensus on that, that'd be great. Here's Rob, you're on this way, we're adding Rob Balloway. He's already on, so what that means is when somebody comes in, it's incumbent on whoever comes in to wait for public comment to ask any questions and not to start our meeting off with catching them from ground zero. And I think that we can just all collectively shush somebody if they come with the questions. We can direct them back to the minutes, to the videos of the prior meetings, and we can move on with our work without having to have the first 30 minutes of every meeting be, what's this about? So if that's okay with everybody, I'm going to move on from that, and our committee formulation is fine. Okay. The next on our agenda is some updates from previous meetings. I'm hoping to have some from Sean here, but I know I have some stuff from the superintendent that I'll relay. Last night at our meeting, the superintendent told us that we finalized a concept letter. Oh, we need one more.
Sorry.
Okay,
So
I'll pull that extra one bit right next to you. We'll pull it in a circle and slide it inside this.
we're pushing.
Slide ourselves this way a little bit.
We're pushing.
You're good. Get him in. Got her in, all right.
Yep.
Nope.
Right, go back to where I was. Last night at our meeting, the superintendent told us that he had finalized a concept letter that he was sending off for some federal grants. And he had $4 million worth of grants that he was applying for, with $1.1 million of those grants being specific to Danville and specific to potentially the ERU units and also the lighting, and then also one other thing, electrical. And he's going to be putting the concept letter. It's pretty complex. There's a 5:95 ratio where if we were to get these grants and they were approved, then they would pay for 95% of the grant, 95% of the work, and we would pay for 5%. But we're only at the first step, which is the concept letter. They have to accept the concept, and that'll have to be worked out further. And then he'd have to give a lot more specific detail and find some local vendors to sign off. He said it was pretty complex, and he would update us as he goes along. But he also said that if we don't get, one more time, guys, everybody scramble for a table.
Chair there.
So he also said that if we don't end up getting money in this kind of grant, we'd be able to resubmit it because they're doling it out from the national level in $80 million increments. So it's possible that this is a grant that pops back up again, and you're gonna be able to resubmit a concept letter with better ideas. So that is the update that I have on something that might be pending.
Sorry, I missed a piece of that. So this was Mark Tucker found?
Yeah, the superintendent, he's
Okay.
working on a grant. We talked about it at the meeting last night. And so we talked about it at the meeting prior to that, and I think, Sean, do you know anything about it? He knows a little bit about it as well. He knows about as much as I do. You know anything I didn't say?
Nope.
Okay, so
We see the three things it's supposed to cover.
the third thing is the ERU units, lighting,
Yep.
and the
HVAC or heating.
HVAC. So,
Yeah.
okay, so three of the big hits across the way that we might be able to pick off that don't trigger the big number, the major project. And so those are some things that we're gonna that we may have a potential way to address on that. And then I know that Rob and Sean had a discussion after our last meeting Did you look into anything regarding,
I looked at the utiliduct, construction methods, and I mean, it's definitely something that might be able to be utilized here to save on underground disturbance and things like that.
and so and that would be part of that, but utiliducting in that situation would be part of part of a capital project where we leave the walls on, not something that we would be able to do. Like,
We just have to penetrate the walls on the inside of the duct.
okay. So that would be something that would be added into our actual project, we're gonna do the actual building of a project that can do that, so there's a potential for that there. Does anybody else have any updates that they want to share? Any, I know those people are gonna bounce some ideas off people. Sean, one more, were you able to measure any spaces or was the snow in the way?
So now I got a picture of it here. I didn't print it up on anybody, but you can pass it around. So we're looking for flat areas where we could fit at least 2 trailers, and the red spot, so where the flattest areas are without a lot of slopage or underground things that might get in the way or crush the drainage.
So I'm gonna send this way because they can't reach. So that was gonna go around, that's some potential for some places that if we were discussing temporary buildings or some frame construction that might work. Did you get some sizes on those?
I was going off of the standard trailer size.
Okay, and can you say what those numbers, what's the standard frame size?
I think it's 15 by 40.
All right, and can somebody tell me if 15 by 40 is big enough for, let's say, 14 preschool kids? No, right?
They have preschool has the strictest regulations, for sizing.
Yeah, that's the outside dimension.
So I talked to the board chair, Bruce Palmer, about the community center down below. 1,200 square feet, it has a bathroom and a kitchen. And if the board decided they wanted to look into that space, we would be open for that to happen. So whether it works for you or not, it's about 1,200, I paid
Now, is that 1,200 down and up, because there's a.
total. First floor,
Oh, on the first floor.
first floor. I don't think you'd want to go upstairs.
I'd be shocked, well, I'm shocked that it's 1,200 downstairs. 'Cause that's
Well, it
pretty-
was 30 by 30 is what I had. It's a big
30 by 30 is 900.
900, you're right, 900.
30 by 30 is 900.
Plus the kitchen.
What? Doesn't include the kitchen. It's a
Yeah,
little bit larger than that. A little bit larger than that, but I just paced it and roughly. So it's there. You'll have to consider it if you want.
okay.
That's all first floor.
Okay, so it's a community center down the road. It's a thing that we can consider.
Probably be a lot less expensive than doing one of those, I would think.
It's just hard it's hard to put preschool kids off site, and that's what we're looking
I
at.
get it,
So
I
that's,
get
it might be used for some things.
Something else. It's
It might
not,
be,
we're
it might
not
be
saying
useful for
just that.
some of the destination classrooms that we have for high school kids. We talked about that with Tim, about who's got the longest legs that can walk down there and who we can reliably get to go down the hill
They can come back.
and then come back for lunch.
And I just wanted to confirm, I couldn't on Zoom, but this conversation was a little bit 2 weeks back. So where the preschool kids are right now, there's no other space within the school for that to happen. So it's like, that's what works for the bathroom. Was it the bathroom
They
aspect?
have to have bathrooms, they have to have an outdoor egress, so there's another room right across that has a bathroom in it, but it doesn't meet,
Doesn't count.
nope,
Okay,
it doesn't
gotcha.
have an egress to the outside.
Okay,
And then it's got 2 separate doors into the hallway.
and 15 by 40 is what, like 600? That's like, it's pretty small. Yeah. Do you know what the size of those are right now and how many you guys put in there and how many kids are in
I
there?
would have to. measure them, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know the size, Sean, of the preschool class we're talking?
Off the top of my head, I do not.
Smaller than this one.
Yeah, it's smaller, I would say. These are the bigger class.
And why did you guys go with the 2 trailers? Just because like a spacing issue? I may have missed that on Zoom. I'm never good with
He was
Zoom.
just looking for places, and 2 seemed like a good number to start with. Is it
Just to see. Okay. Gotcha. So that doesn't even sound feasible from a space standpoint, at least if it was for preschool.
Preschool's gonna honestly be the hardest to accommodate because the state licensing requirements are. They follow a different set of requirements than the agency of education.
I heard you say that, yeah.
and it's intense.
Okay, gotcha.
So that makes it a really hard group. Like if we did trailers, we would have to plumb them.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be an optional thing. We couldn't tell 3-year-olds to march through the snow with them.
Right.
That we would, because we have it passed, so.
But we do know that there's absolutely no other space for them in the school, and that's the main priority.
Yeah.
And I would argue with those placements that there might be 2 there that you also wouldn't have to plumb, but the rest of those they're too far.
Oh, yeah, yes, exactly,
Yeah.
yes, they you would have to, I
That's-
agree with that.
It doesn't matter what age they are, otherwise that becomes, oh, can I go to the bathroom because I don't want to do my work, I'll be back in 20.
I'll be there.
Can I get a test that since having taught in the air first semester, that's already an unexpected.
Right? Let's have the class.
Yes.
So are we assuming
Right,
that the
right.
standard trailers cannot be plumbed? Is that what we're?
No, what is it? I think though, not that they can't be plumbed, are they large enough when you had a bathroom, can they be adequate? And how expensive is plumbing to a faraway location into your plumbing system? We're thinking about costs.
Yeah, we have a lot of ledge. To go over on the property.
And trailer versus modulars, do you mean them sort of separately or?
I understand those to be the same word.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was wondering where people were
Yeah,
on that.
if you say
I think there's a
if you
bunch
say
of
trailer in this capacity, I understand what you mean a modular.
Okay, it just seems like there's a bunch of different options for modulars. I don't know.
Modular is different than a trailer. Trailer is a temporary, could be on a permanent foundation or a temporary foundation or no foundation. And a modular could be shipped in one piece, it could be shipped in several pieces and built on site.
Put together.
2 of them put together. So like these 2 standard, if it were, say, a modular, you could have them come together like even a trailer, you could have a double wide, you know, or a triple wide even. So there's definitely some.
Yeah, the
options.
problem is that you've also got the structure in the middle though, at each one. You see, so you need a larger space for a classroom, right? You need one space for a classroom. So,
Right,
that would be kind of hard to do when you have the structure in the middle.
well,
Join.
perhaps,
Right.
or the bathrooms go in the middle, like,
Yeah.
you know, it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, I guess, and who's going to be out there. And what it's gonna be used for, but right now at first blush, we're talking about kindergartners, but. How much space do they need? Like, I guess that's the question, is how much do they need, because we're hearing, we don't have enough here, we don't have enough there, but we don't know what do you need?
So
Yeah, that I
Yeah.
can try to look that up on my phone,
Yeah.
I can't do it here right
I have
now.
a question here.
They have
Yeah.
the most legally defined space that has the requirements. that-
Preschool.
Right.
The question that I have is,
Right.
Everybody.
when you were talking about 1,200 square feet. What was that based on? I mean, is that based on the number of kids that are here now or in the future? Or just that's a baseline required for anything? Or what was that?
I think that was just.
1,200 square feet is the size of the community center.
No, it's 900, that's what you heard, it's 900.
Okay, well, that's 900, but you said there's a certain square footage amount.
For preschool specific.
Okay, do you know
And
what?
That's what I said, I can try, Dave's trying, cause I'm.
And that's-
Yeah, preschool is 35 square feet per child.
Okay, and how many child, how many children?
5 by
Right now?
So. 15 is our current capacity, it's on the side of our,
15 times 35,
One classroom.
just for one classroom.
Yep, so we're talking.
525. 525 square feet, 15.
So allowing even for some expansion in the future, you're talking anywhere between 700 and 1,000 square feet. Would be somewhat of a reasonable figure. Okay, so I think that's important to remember. Going forward, we're gonna throw around a lot of different things that would be.
If we kick someone else outside, are there other rooms in the building that could be preschool rooms with that have the egress and the bathroom? I guess, are there no other ones that have that?
There are 4.
Because
The 4 classrooms that have bathrooms in them are the 2 kindergarten classrooms and the 2 preschool bathrooms, or the 2 preschool classrooms. We have used the classroom by the gym. My first 2 years as a preschool classroom, it's very, very difficult to not have a bathroom right there, because then you have to have 2 adults in the classroom and another adult in the bathrooms with the kids. And then in this part's fine, but then those bathrooms get totally closed off, because your preschool regulations say you can't have a preschooler and a senior come into the bathroom at the same time.
But could the kindergartners go to a room? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
basically?
yeah, so it wasn't conducive, it wasn't as conducive for preschool,
Mhm.
it would still be tricky for those people with little.
Wait,
small
and so-
five-year-olds.
Short question, do the kindergartners have to have a bathroom?
Do the other 2 kindergarten rooms have an outdoor egress?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
So that is a possibility.
So
I do think they might also have to have a bathroom.
My
in their
understanding is
classroom, but-
kindergartners also legally have to have a bathroom,
Oh.
which is why we can't move them in the first. place.
Okay,
That's why we can't push it.
Legally, I could not imagine kindergarten.
okay.
Right, and so, well,
Right,
and so I
yeah.
just want, I know we're talking about. Moving kindergarten and preschool, and I just want to make sure we knew why we're talking about moving them, is because there isn't another space that's adequate for them in the building.
Right.
Right,
And so even though it makes more sense when you're talking about here, now you're out there in the field, put some middle schoolers or some high schoolers there. We're literally out of space for. preschoolers.
and yeah, and preschool specifically, because preschool is on a waiting list, and that was to be the next several years too. Sorry, we're gonna go.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out that, when I first moved here, they didn't have enough room in kindergarten for my son, he was 3 or 4, and I drove to Walden, and they had an outdoor structure, and that was like 15 years ago, and I think they're still using it. And so I think they've been using it for like 30 years, so I don't know how big it is, it was a trailer, it was like,
They still use it, it's next to the library, they use it as a library now, and the thing about it is it's right next to the building. It's like,
Right.
it's around the corner.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's what they use as their library.
I don't know how big it is, but.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but that's something to think about with materials, if we're looking at this like a modular building or a trailer might not be. Are we thinking 30 years, 15 years out of getting use out of that? I mean, if you think about those buildings and having salt and everything coming into the building, the boots and the use that we're gonna be having in those buildings, just, I think. Thinking about that, we have my husband runs a modular housing company and we talked about that where. I hesitant to mention it, but that's a concern where just in terms of the structure and having so many students, unless we, it's a smaller group, but just something to think about how long we want to use this for. Are we thinking 10, 15, 30, 50 years, but planning for that in the future that we may have to adapt with that building sooner than we would with a different building.
Like with everything, you have to do upkeep, that's
Right,
what hasn't
yeah.
been happening here.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the life, the life
Right.
is on them normally, but talking about those 2 trailers, if you're saying 600 and. I mean, maybe that's just pushing it, unless there's a bigger trailer, because I'm just thinking 15 times 35 was. Whatever, a little under 600, but then you get a bathroom, right? So that would be pushing it for those.
Yeah.
But I would imagine there's some modulars out there, and Stacy, you probably did some research, like, I don't know, from a lifetime. What they're supposed to last, or,
It depends. I mean, you're right. I mean, if you use and abuse it and you don't do any maintenance at all, you're gonna have a very short life on anything. But again, Walden still has theirs and they're still using it, and they used it for the majority of the time for their preschool program, and they had 2 sides with the bathrooms in the middle with their own egress and everything. They had everything that they needed. And then a few years ago, they switched it to a library situation, and they moved the library out of their main building to repurpose their spaces inside their building.
Alright.
I
don't want to, this is not to shoot down the idea, this is just to clarify, probably the reason they did that was licensing. Because preschool has fallen under CBV, under DCF's jurisdiction within the last 5 years. So all of these licensing requirements popped up about, within a recent time span. And so that's part of the thing, that some of these changes are because of this new licensing.
Well, I think there might have been a few things that caused it, that and security and different ways to secure the school property, I mean, they are the most vulnerable kids and sticking them out in a modular unit, that might be a good argument to put high schoolers out there and to figure out maybe reusing or repurposing the gym or some other big space that you have available in the school, and maybe make a new gym somewhere, you know, so I mean, there's some other ideas. Yeah, didn't think about that one, but that's a lot of space.
One of the designs, all three of the designs we just shot down had a gym, had a second gym in them. And
No, I'm not saying that we don't, we can replace it. I think it'd be easier, because it would be easier to rebuild a gym than it would be to build classrooms with a lot of different requirements and keep the kids all under one roof. If that's the desire, then we got to think about what else could go outside of the school.
But what if we took preschool right out of the picture, and moved the community group, put it at a different location? And then that looks at the new space that we do for the other space needs that you need throughout the campus. And just take preschool right out of the equation and just solve to that with another location. If the community center is appropriate, but it's the legal requirements. I'm not sure. I know it'd be great to keep everything on site, but years ago, preschool and kindergarten actually was offsite.
so we can talk about it, but I don't know how you get your special educators in there if they're not on the same building, since they all work they work in this building. And so now you're asking your special educators to travel
Okay.
down there. And so
Yeah.
some of the concerns about how your staffing works and how you get them fed. And how you get them, like all of the rest of the things with having an offsite school that runs out of this school, because if you have to get them fed, you have to put a cook down there as well. And you have to have specials, you have to dedicated specials, and then you don't have a PE teacher.
Yep.
Because the PE happens up here, and so you have to, there'll be a lot to figure out. And I also don't think that building's 900 feet.
Yeah.
There it is.
I go to a V in the back, and there's a big bunch of stuff. I sat on that board for 2 years myself, so I've moved things.
I paced it out. 30 by, it was 30 feet wide, 30 feet, actually a little bit more than that. And that didn't include the kitchen and the
Safe.
the safe
Yeah, there's
and the bathroom.
So,
Anyway, even if it's not that, it's still more than 600. I can tell you that.
yeah, so, right, and if it was 600, that's one classroom, and it's not two classrooms. So, can't put two classrooms in. So, this is something we gotta figure out. We gotta figure out where we are. Rob.
The problem with any structure that would be constructed for the long term is that we may end up with the problem that we've got today is that you just plop in a structure without any master plan, and it blocks expansions.
Right.
And that's what we have now, with this space over.
This one, again, this one.
And that was what I was thinking of, if we can think long-term, what are we working towards, and,
Right.
and so we're not putting the next generation in a.
Blocking.
Yeah.
Hey,
Listening to what everybody's saying, I have some suggestions for action steps that we could take. I think it'd be great to get some action steps going rather than just continuing to talk about everything we've been talking about, if possible. I'm hearing a lot about the preschool. I know that that is an issue. My kid was in the classroom that had no bathroom and it was a pain. But I do think it's important to think about, it sounds like we're talking about two things. One, thinking about a long-term plan for fixing the issues that are in the building that Sean told us about a couple of meetings ago. Some of those maybe are covered by the grant. I think that we should be adding into our budget every year of something for fixing those issues, like start planning for them in the future. I know that's not going to happen this year, but putting a line item in the budget that is for building repairs every year to kind of prepare the community for it on a slower basis than all at once millions of dollars. And the second thing that I'm hearing us talk about is a new building. With the new building, I think it's important for the school board to figure out what the community wants for the future of the school. Like Molly was just saying, a long-term plan, a master plan, like Rob was saying. And one of the big questions, I know this is a contentious issue, but is the future of the high school. If what does the community want to invest in, I think is an important question. If we want to invest in our high school, then maybe we should consider that new detached building being a high school building so that our high school can be more appealing and have more programs and have a plan for possible expansion in the future, if that's an option. If we're investing in our preschool, that's a different question. It feels important to know what the community wants, and I don't know what the answer to that is. I know that it's a hot topic for a lot of people. But it's important to think about, because if we don't invest in our high school, then it may not continue to, so I don't know, like, maybe we need to add it, and that what does the town want to spend their money on? What do they want to invest in? What's it going to look like in the future, so that whoever is on the school board 30 years from now is not dealing with this problem again. So some potential things we could do.
I agree with Katie. I think the important thing, though, that we can't lose focus on is we are looking at preschool, and those are the up and coming kids, and those are the kids that apparently are on a waiting list. But I think we have to look at the overall picture. We're investing in our kids. From the kids that are going to be coming into preschool this year, which I have a granddaughter that's going to be 3 in July, so I think she's going to be eligible to come in. And the school will never be the same after that happens. I have a grandson in 8th grade, a granddaughter in 7th grade, 2 granddaughters in 4th grade. We're investing in our kids. And so I agree with what Katie said as far as, do we look at, when we decide I shouldn't say when, if we decide on a new building, is it going to be a new high school building, a couple of classrooms for the high school, or a couple of classrooms to accommodate, the preschool, so then other classrooms that are overloaded can go into where the preschool is now. But I just think we can't lose focus on, and because, I agree, we seem to be just focusing on preschool, and we got to meet those requirements, there's no doubt about that, and kindergarten, but we're investing in our kids. And I think that's the thing that we have to look at, regardless of whether it's a kid coming into preschool this year, or a kid that's about to be a freshman, or a kid that's already in high school. Because there's probably every grade in the school that could use better classrooms and more space, but we know we can't accommodate them because of monetary issues. So but I do agree, we have to figure out, what does the community want? I mean, based on who I've talked to, and I know Doug said this at an earlier meeting, I think the community wants the high school to stay open. But that's for another discussion.
So yeah, that's not a discussion that we can really fully flesh out here.
Right.
There would be a couple of ways to bring the discussion, and one of them would be a petition to the town, and one would be the school board votes. That's a vote of the town that would have to happen, and it couldn't happen now, and then it also wouldn't phase out. If it did phase out, it wouldn't phase out for years.
No.
And all these issues are existing now. So what we're talking about here is the net. And so to Katie's point, if you want to talk about what if we push it that way, as opposed, if I say this way's the preschool and that way's the high school, if we push the high school kids out of the building into a new building, what could we do? Because how could we reconfigure our elementary school to accommodate our preschool kids? Does pushing high school out allow us to take some of the 1st and 2nd grade rooms and turn them into, I'm pointing this way because that's the way they are, turn them into kindergarten classrooms right across from that one bathroom, and would that be adequate?
Or could we add
That's
bathrooms?
what I was just gonna say, are
I
it
don't-
possible to pop one off the side, or is that a build?
I see the bathrooms are built.
Yeah.
It seems like that your whole in any sort of adding bathrooms, and this is to the high school thing, because we would have to add bathrooms, if you got to slap a bathroom on the side of the building, and the minute that the brick touches the brick, you're in the middle of a renovation.
Yeah.
And now you're gonna have to renovate.
Is there ever any sort of leeway on that?
Yeah, I don't, like, I don't
That's what
know,
who
I
do we
don't
talk
think
to
so,
about
I don't get that vibe.
Well,
But
that's what I'm just wondering, is like, if you were like, hey, the school's got a problem, we need some more preschool, we need to serve the community, can we pop a bathroom on, like, who do you talk to?
so we need to have our facilities director, what's the number that you got that they can't trace the call? What are those? Oh, whatever, so start that off and then I have questions to the state. So what if what if, so I don't know if you have, I'm sure you have a really good idea of what happens.
The 1-2 level now has a subfloor underneath with a crawl space, so ideally, if you had to put a bathroom in those rooms individually, it would be a lot easier than, say, putting like a bathroom into one of these classrooms.
But if you could, you touch that plumbing, you know, that's the 37, if you touch that plumbing, there's level pipes. If you touch that plumbing, the HVAC system's gotta go, and you can't utility duct on the outside, because you're plumbing that on the inside.
Can't you just
Because
like run
well,
the checks?
Because you got a whole,
You just-
can't use PEX in a building like this,
Oh, yeah.
can't use PEX in a building, it's gotta be copper.
And I could be wrong, but I think that if you say to them, hey, we just have this one problem,
Right.
can we just fix it?
That's what I'm thinking.
Well, no, I'm thinking they're gonna say, well, we're being kind now by not having made you already
Oh,
fix
gotcha.
it.
Right.
I think that's gonna be the response.
Yes.
Because right now they want everybody to be up to code.
I know.
Right now, they're saying we're being really kind, so go ahead and
push
touch it. Like, go ahead and touch
But the
it.
rest of that story is they've been in, like the state has been in, and they've not just pulled permits, they've been inside the building and they've looked inside the walls.
Mhm.
And we're waiting for the rest of, for the details of that report coming up.
The condition report, right.
The facilities condition report.
Just to Tim's point, when we did the heating system for the air handlers, we had the problem that we had no moving air in the building. We had to bring air in, we had to heat that, we had to heat what was coming in, that was an emergency repair. We got exactly that warning from the state. They said, okay, this is an emergency and don't ever.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we operate,
Reality.
we have a public school without sprinklers throughout the whole entire building. I mean, that's a big one right there. Because-
Yeah, that's unusual these days.
So just to clarify back to Katie's point, so it sounds like where we're headed with this is we're keeping the high school open, keeping the preschool open, obviously, and then we're looking at ways to patch it together and address space. That's where I liked Katie's point about coming together around our plan forward and just making sure we're all on the same page. That I've heard ideas about taking down the 37 building altogether. So I'd hate for us to go forward and waste time, it's always valuable, but go down a road where, oh wait, we're actually gonna take this building out of the picture entirely. And just keep processing like we have been and not utilize our time.
So can I use that discussion to put Mary on the spot, just for a second, because you mentioned in the last meeting, what if we decide to take away the 37 building or the 57 building? And you said just that, you were just postulating, what if that is the most prudent use of our money? I just wonder that given all the things that we know can be, could that be, since it is already an existing structure, could it possibly be the most prudent plan, since we need space to tear that down? And I wonder if you had any thoughts about that since you brought it up. No, I don't mean to put you on the spot like this, but you had an idea at the last meeting and you didn't get good. And when I heard it, I couldn't figure out how to do it and then still have the school exist with all the kids in it.
That's part of the issue is that once you take. One of the things that I was dealing with is how much money. Were they talking about that would be required the minute we do anything major with the 37 and the 57? And if it's millions of dollars, the question is if we're just throwing it away, because it sounded like like the 37, it looked like the electrical, probably the plumbing. I don't know if there's any mechanical system that is even,
Right.
it looks like you've got the whole thing. And so the question is, well, why not just tear it down and put the money towards a new? But as far as the logistics, I didn't go beyond.
Yeah,
And it comes back to the other question is, that if you have to build new, we looked at, tearing everything down and building new. And that was just like out of the question. So what can you do? And that's the whole question then. But it would be nice if you could tear that all down and it didn't trigger anything that you had to do like with this other part. And you could maybe add on a new structure. And I still think it should concentrate on the pre-K. Because I think this was never built. Any of these, I don't think were built having pre-K
right.
in mind.
Right.
And it's a whole different.
Or kindergarten for that.
Yeah, or kindergarten, so it's just never meant for them, and I think that would be where you would want to concentrate that you, anything, any area that we have now would have to be so much retrofitting it. Does that even make sense? So,
Could you tear that down and then rebuild there and expand upon to add more space? I mean, again, I don't know what we're talking money wise, but just if it needs to come down, is there a way within that? Thank you, that you could expand upon it and rebuild, I don't know.
I don't think I would rebuild on the exact same spot, because what that did it and created all this interior space,
Okay.
which is what we wanted to get away from.
Gotcha.
I think if people there to see, you couldn't run a school without, because that houses 100, 110, 120 kids.
Well, that's what I was thinking, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
gotcha.
That's, there's 120 kids that take their lessons in those
In that
rooms.
space, got it.
Actually, first.
Okay, one thing I think. I think if we're looking at the new build, the very first new build idea that built an elementary school here. Part of what I have felt from the community is the importance of having pre-K-12 in one space. And so that's something that, as Dave and I were talking, with two ex-fellows, we talked about a lot. So part of that sends a connecting walkway all the way through. If we didn't do that, and you built a brand new building up there, like for the elementary or something, you wouldn't have to renovate in here immediately, because you're not touching any of this structure. I think it's an interesting thought about, like, if you tore down some of the other places and what that would look like. The 37 building holds 9 classrooms, 5 offices, plus all the facilities offices and all the boilers.
And water.
So, that's a big, and I'm not saying they're not big classrooms, I mean, that's the next place we should go sit in, they're not big classrooms, like the fact that we have 9 up there is a lot, but. That's just something to think about, like, I don't think it's a bad idea at all, but there's a lot crammed in that little space.
Oh, no, I absolutely, that,
Yeah.
you know, the space that's used, the question is even though you renovate it, you're dealing with an older structure, how much maintenance are you going to be going forward? Is just like you keep pouring more money into it? I have no, I mean, that's not my area.
I'm gonna go Stacy, Katie, John, Rob. Stacy.
Thank you. These are all really great, and I'm really glad we're having a roundtable discussion. What I'm a little frustrated with, and what I would like to see is, how are we documenting these ideas and then vetting them? Because they're going through you, Clayton, and no offense, but you're shooting them down.
I don't mean to be.
Hold on. But we're not fully vetting those ideas. There's some really fabulous ideas. There's a idea of some action steps and discussions on longevity and growth and long-term and all of these. I propose that we start documenting these down and put smaller working groups together to try and vet these through and then come back, and we could do them as mini sessions in the same group and report out, like, here's what this group talked about, so that we can start getting some more concrete things on there and pair together what the group already did all these years that got us to this point now. I feel like we've got to pair those. We came back with, okay, here were the 3 ideas, they got shot down. Well, now we can look at them. I want to talk about those because those were really, really important. But at the same time, we've got some new ideas that are being injected. So I think we need to pair these, and I would like to see us. There's a lot of brain trust here, and I'd like us to break down into some work groups and talk about them.
It's on the agenda. I'm trying to get to it. I'm trying to get it on the agenda.
Stacy, I
So-
agree, and I think we've talked about this a couple of times, like even if we had, I think Bruce mentioned this and Katie mentioned this, that. If we do have a brainstorm, I actually think we could trim it back fairly quickly with our 2 major priority areas of space and the code issues, so. It seems daunting, but I think if we throw it all out there and just start crossing off, it really won't be a long list that we're left with, I'm expecting, but. But, yeah.
So if you'd like to, I think we need 3 groups, and what Katie's ideas were gonna be what the groups were gonna be to start with. She had 2, and she's gonna talk again. I think she might have a 3rd that she's gonna tell us about. But it's, what's our plan gonna be?
Right,
What was the plan gonna be? And then when you look at what we've already done, like we talked about, we already had, and I'll do the grand design for the building, and there was no real design, it's just a concept. A building on where the soccer field is now. And what's the prudent use of the money? The prudent use of the money to get new buildings and to what the, and so I'd love to break into some groups and talk about what our needs are. And we'll say your 2 things again, and we'll long-term plan.
And then a detached building, and my comment was gonna be just what Sarah said, that if we go with the detached building, we don't have to worry about the code issues at the same time. Because we're not renovating this building, so I know that's not necessarily ideal, but it's something we could do on the sooner side.
Is a walkway, an enclosed walkway considered attached? I mean, does that attach the buildings?
Actually, you can it can be designed such that it is a distinct building. You put in a 3-hour construction wall. And openings that are along. So, for electric. So. But you can. But that can be constructed. Like that. Interesting building.
Because I would think that you would really want a structure that wasn't connected.
Well, you can. But it isn't a problem with a connection. Because that can be designed to make them distinct buildings.
Okay. John?
So I have a question on codes, how it works and stuff. It would give an example. Let's say the school board decides to upgrade the electrical. And you hire a contractor to come in and do the electrical. Does it mean that because you're just touching the electrical, that you now have to do everything else to bring it up or code, or are you just good with the electrical and you can move on to the next?
That depends which section of the electrical you're talking. If you want to add new lights, which is one of the things we're talking about, you can utilize the existing electrical system. Once you start tampering with the actual distribution panels, main distribution gear, that's when you get into.
You have to do the entire electrical system, is what you're saying. What I'm saying is, if you do the electrical system, does that mean now you have to sprinkle it too because you're touching the electrical?
Right.
Does it get into
Is
other
that the trigger?
areas?
Is that the trigger that says
now all up.
now everything?
I find out that answer. I don't know. I know that if we were to touch the main distribution panels right now, we would have to replace the main distribution panels. If we were to add a sub panel to an existing panel, we would have to replace the panel feeding that sub panel.
But my concern is on all this is it sounds like this whole building is band-aid. Okay, so at some point,
Every school
something
is
will
safe.
break and you have to touch the main panel.
Right.
If at that point and you're touching the main panel as an example. And then you come in, okay, well, you can't just touch the main panel. You got to sprinkle the building, you gotta re-upgrade this, you gotta do heat, you gotta put the roofs on.
To
In
my
other words, you have
knowledge-
everything you have to
Right.
do.
I don't, to my knowledge, it's an individual system.
Okay,
So the
because-
electrical system is separate from the sprinkler system,
Okay,
separate from the plumbing system.
if that's the case, then. You know, there's 2 things. You're dealing with space. But you've also got the structure. And if you don't do something. To fix something, which is where I think Katie made a very about point, you have to put a budget in for whatever, because people haven't been doing this. So. I agree, we have to get into groups and all that, but I think the board has to decide, okay. We need to get the electrical up to code. How much is it gonna cost? Get that in, put it to the town. They, in the budget, and they vote it. Because you have to start I think checking things off, because what I think happened before is you've got these three options. And the feeling I get is the town was saying, we're not gonna do any of those three. But you've got this building and a structure here, and I know you got the spacing issues, which is, I think, is the immediate thing. But you got the secondary issue that you have to start fixing this building. And you have to pick, I don't care what you pick something. And just completely get it done. And then you move on to the next section. And I think that's part of the action plan that this group needs to do. That engineers thing had that laid out. They had, these are the priorities that you have to do. They laid it out in that engineering study that I read. So I don't know which one you pick. I don't know what's the crisis. But if you don't pick that, the school, something will break in the school and then we're all.
Right.
Are we
we're-
waiting to see just on that note, if, like what the grant's gonna cover, right? So basically, it seems like it was, like electrical's definitely out, or do we know like air filtration, whatever they're called up there?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, do we know what was even a potential in that grant if it was to go through? I may have walked in at that time, I'm sorry. Was electricity involved?
So the grant involved multiple systems, it involved HVAC, electrical, some plumbing.
So basically, we need to wait
Little bit
for
of
what
everything.
John's saying of like, if we could get that grant, then maybe we could make some of that stuff happen
You
and
get
then
the
we'll know how
grant,
to
and it
line
gets
it up.
that all done,
Right,
and you bring it up to code, that's great.
right.
Even though if you can't get a grant, you're still going to have to do what's necessary to continue this building. Based on what the town decided when you put out that, there is no choice. So as a board, the board members, it's incumbent, yeah, I love the idea of getting a grant where 95% of it is funded someplace else, that's a no-brainer. But even if that doesn't happen, there has to be the process going through, we're gonna start peeling these things off so that this building still can be used. As funky as it is, this is still a space in which kids can be taught. You gotta fix the other things regarding the preschool, but this building has to be maintained. There is no choice. Otherwise, you're not just dealing with a high school, you're dealing with all of the kids in here with a building that, worst case scenario, somebody comes in and says you can't use it. I don't know if that's a factor or could happen, but
It seems like dependent upon hearing about the grant, then we could all sort of chip away and try to figure out what are the priorities, like you're saying.
that engineer's report laid it out. They had, this is priority, this is not important. These things are a priority. It was there. And I don't remember it exactly where it was, but that you think you identify what the worst issue is. The board puts it before this, we've got this estimate of whatever dollar amount is, like sprinkling the building. And I like, I'm so glad Rob is on this, because he's gonna be able to tell you, have a lot of background coming in on what he's done, so. That's my piece.
Rob, and then we go to Doug.
Have you got a deferred maintenance? About the reserve fund?
We have, so we have we have a reserve fund of unspent money, so we have an unrestricted reserve that.
But annually, a deferred maintenance.
Like a capital reserve?
Yeah. I believe, Marvin, that he brought up that long ago. The school had one.
Look at
That
this.
was dropped in it. And emptied out.
I don't think we have one that is specifically for that.
Yeah, I would
The capital.
get an actual deferred maintenance reserve. Every year you put in a little bit and it grows. And then you spend it down as you do.
I agree, Rob, but the flip side of it is, you're building that reserve fund, but you don't have that luxury now. You have to
Well, you
spend
don't
money.
right now, but
So you
you
have to-
really need to have.
You
that.
have to come in and say, okay, we're gonna spend $1.5 million using the figure. Throwing it out to sprinkle the building, I don't know, just throw it
Yeah.
out. So we're gonna sprinkle the building to bring that up to code and fix that. Well, that has to be put before the voters and voted on to be done. The taxes on this town are gonna go up.
Mhm.
There's no other way around it. To maintain this building, we're gonna have to spend more money in taxes to be able to do what we need to do. Now, how far you bring them up, I don't know, but otherwise, this building is at some point, it doesn't matter what any of us think about, preschool or high school or any of this stuff,
It'll disintegrate.
it's not so much disintegrate, nobody will ever, the walls are here and everything, it looks pretty nice, but nobody will let us in.
In that report, oh, I think you were going to next.
I was just gonna agree with, John, I think if we do what you're talking about, and I don't think it's a bad thing. From that point forward, that's kind of the starting point that it's a point of no return. In the discussion over tearing the school down, once you start investing millions.
I agree.
Over the next few years, and that's not a bad thing.
It ends.
It's like the beginning of the road, that, okay, are we gonna invest? Maybe not what we'd like, long term, but it's what we can afford. And the one thing too, I will say, about this building, just from what I've seen and what I know, this is true of almost every building in the state of Vermont. That was where it's been, a lot of this part is old, I know, but still, there's buildings all through this whole state that are built in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and they're still functioning. They may be not ideal, but it's just like anything else. You adapt, you do with what you can. This, I emphasize a few times at these meetings. We have no tax base to support a lot of what we're talking about. So that's the underlying, I know you know this, that's the underlying, everybody here knows, I know that. But I'm just reminding everybody, we can talk about that. I'm relieved, for whatever it's worth, that right now we're talking, I think, a little more realistic solutions to what is, what needs to happen. But anyway, I think it's important to realize that, yeah, we start talking about investing, $1 million, $1.5 million, whatever, on putting sprinkler system in, or doing electrical, or whatever, one thing at a time.
Looking at grants and
Where, yeah, and what the things are means to some, yeah, it is gonna cost some, but at least there'll be a realistic number as opposed to pie in the skies there.
Yeah, and I think that looking at it, there have been two sides kind of looking at, do we go to the well once with a one number to the town, or do we look at it over like a 10-year period? I think the benefit of looking at it over a multi-year period is that monies become available year to year that may not be available now. So there's a potential for money to become available that we don't have available to us now. So we have two things going. We have the make good that we must hit the number ones on the Truex report. Obviously we got to go through that, which we've talked about. And then we have the space issue. So I think they do kind of go hand in hand, but at the same time, we do have a space issue that I think we need to challenge the school administration to say, what is it that your needs are? If you were to say, my ideal need would be, I did a walkthrough with Sarah and Dave Monday, and we looked at the auditorium, for example, and we're like, we got drama and music in here, it just doesn't work. So well, what if we move music out and gave the auditorium, which is stadium based, which is more for drama, and built in this new space that we're talking about, whether it be a modular or new build or trailer type system, a music room, an actual music room. So those things, is it preschool, what are those? And so what is the ideal situation to give you your space need? And then from there, we've got, what do we need on that piece? And then what do we minimally have to do, but still chip away, to John's point, to get us up to code? What is the sprinkler cost? What is, I was looking through, I couldn't find it. I think it's on a separate document, but.
But I think that that plan, I don't know if I'm hearing this right, but if we were to sort of space it out over some time, it allows for a few things. One, to see sort of the trajectory of like numbers, who's coming in, what are we seeing for students, et cetera. And also just, it's not like a big slam on the taxpayers. So we can sort of let it unfold. And I just think depending, the grant covering it would be amazing. But like you're saying, if we can just chip away, this year we're doing electric, where are we at? And not, and try to take it bit by bit, if it allows, right? Like if we're not just getting like emergency time.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to clarify that a capital project like that wouldn't be a one-time hit on the taxpayers. It's a 30-year commitment that on the tax base each and every year.
Right.
So the real question is like, is it actually any less expensive to do it, to spend 75 million over 30 years and sort of slow roll it, or is it less expensive to get a USDA loan, subprime rate type of thing and do that? But obviously 75 million is
Depending on
out of
the
this,
total.
out of this world, but just that's sort of the thought is like, I don't know that the way that these are paid for, it's not a sort of a slug. And the one question that I think I have, it's more of a troubling existential question is, I mean, our costs continue to go up to just run the school. The budgets, they're going through that right now. So thank you guys for all the school board, all looking at those spreadsheets all the time. You know, we're only middle of the road here in Danville in Vermont of spending per pupil. We're pretty low as far as tax rate in Vermont. So there's some room for us to certainly spend more and to go up without necessarily looking that bad to our neighbors. It wouldn't look like we are a Woodstock or a Stowe or somebody like that. But you know, I think that we need to also be really careful as we think about sort of slow rolling this, because we could end up incurring ourselves more costs by deferring maintenance even further and making things more expensive, because we're going to be paying this off over N years anyway, and if that's 30, 45, whatever the case may be. So
So it sounds like maybe the starting point, because that totally makes sense, of course, is see about the grant. And then see what we're sort of looking at, you know, priority wise, and then trying to figure out if we're working into groups or not, our space issue. Like
The
those are
problem-
top priorities.
The problem that the board has is they put out a proposal for three things. The feedback you got from the town, in my opinion, hearing it was, oh, and then you said we're shutting these down. Well, if you shut those three things down, which is what you're talking about, the only viable option you have left is you've got to somehow put money into this building in a way that maintains it or gets rid of some of these problems, because the other three options are off the table. So it's almost like, I get your point. I kind of agree with it, that if you did it over 30 years and just did this one thing, you may be better off, it may be less money, but that's irrelevant, because the town, I don't think will do that. So therefore, we gotta do this. And there's no option other than that, and hopefully you get this grant money that can help defray some of this. Will it be more money? Yes, it will. Because I know that contractors that come in here aren't gonna wanna work in a school that's, you know, with kids and running around and all that stuff. That's gonna be a problem for them. Your ability to get some of the better contractors is going to be difficult, because they aren't gonna wanna work in that environment. So I'm not saying it's not a problem. I think it's a bigger problem than just throwing it out and building a big school, but you voted that out for a reason. The reason you did it was you weren't gonna get it. So therefore, you're stuck. Now, I also agree with Katie that you gotta have some committees together. One is, I think, you gotta look at spacing needs. That's an immediate thing. And then the second thing is prioritizing what to do with this building. Those to me are two that I think. And the plan, I think it could be another plan and other interesting ideas you've got, but you get back to those three options, they weren't gonna go through, and it's what I heard was people were scared about putting a 30-year commitment into something as well as the cost. You can mitigate this cost somewhat, depending on how bad this building is to repair. You can do some and maybe a year off or do something. I'm not certain how the timeline on that is going. I'm simply saying the board, you as a board are now, you're off all those three things. You voted it off. The only way to do that would be put it before and just have the town vote on it. But if you're off on that, you're saying that's not going to be there. You've now got to spend money on this building in an incremental way, and you're stuck. And that's okay. That's not a bad decision, because that's what the town wants. Now you got to figure it out. Now I'll shut up.
Sean, first.
Coming back to your first question, how we narrow down what's the most critical area of the infrastructure to the repair time. We just have that Bureau Veritas come to us, I mentioned, I think 2 meetings ago.
Okay.
And we should have their results back, and that's gonna break down for us what the most
That's great.
important piece of the facility to work on. Mechanically wise first and that second and third.
And cost or no?
No, it'll be up to us to.
Price it out.
Okay, so that specifically is gonna be the corroborating evidence to the 2019 report that we have, and sort of give us a real better idea of two separate people looking
Yeah,
at
let's
this.
do that.
So that we have a much better idea when we're planning of what is the priority, but also based on what Sean says.
And grant availability, that's never gonna go away. I mean, I hope to really get this grant. But help immensely. But there are smaller other grants out there for individual projects, electrical, security, plumbing.
You're not gonna get a big amount of money for, there's not some big bucket where you can go, we want a new school, we're gonna get 60-70% of it paid by anybody out there. That big bucket doesn't exist, is what I understand. Is that accurate?
I don't agree with that 100%. I'll look at the biomass, it was 197,000 we paid.
Oh, you mean for the repair, for the
No,
repair?
that was through a grant.
No, I know, but the big school
No.
rebuild,
Yeah.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
talking.
Currently, in school
exists.
funding, there
It doesn't exist.
doesn't exist.
Not that it never.
But it is a potential that we could sort of, if we did an incremental plan, maybe get a grant, this year, grant that, you can try to pick away at some of the priorities.
So I think that's where we're gonna wanna break into groups, because we wanna talk about. If we're working on a plan in one group, in the other group, we're working on what is the priority. We've had the presentation for Bruce.
Yeah, well, I'll let you finish. I just,
So, but like, what is the priority now in the meantime? If we don't get the grant, we're still not moving in. And so is it prudent to try to spend every penny that we have in reserve? To go and attack this air problem and see what, if there's smaller grants we can get along the way? Or is it prudent to wait and see if we can generate more money? Because we can't bring anything to the town in this bidding cycle, in this budget cycle. We can't bring anything to the town with the budget that we're putting before them. So it's, we can't say we need more money right now. It's not an emergency. It's urgent, but it's not an emergency. So I think one of our groups is gonna be, what actions do we need to take immediately? And we had a discussion with Sean. He said his number one immediate action was air. And can we move it? And if we were to try to move forward on air with or without the grant, if we got the grant, then we could use that, and we'd have that money again elsewhere. So if we decided to do something and we got a grant money to pay for it, we still repurpose that money.
And I'm clarifying a question really quickly for Sean.
Please.
So Cam had said, sorry, Bruce, this is me really quick. I did ask- I asked him before, I wasn't. So,
Go ahead.
Cam, I asked this question of Cam in one of the walkthroughs about the code triggers, and I thought it was clear that if you touch anything, whether it's electrical, sprinkler, that it really does trigger all the fixes in the building. And he said the only way it doesn't is if it's an emergency. So I don't know if that was just my misinterpretation of what he said.
Might as
but-
well.
That was my understanding.
Okay, okay.
We've had
That's
sprinkler
one
work
thing.
done here, we've had electrical work done here,
Yeah.
we've had HVAC work done here.
Was it emergency, on an emergency basis?
I believe the project was before me, and that wasn't emergency.
That was,
correct?
that one was absolutely emergency. I
Yeah.
think the sprinkler, just the minor sprinkler, but to sprinkler the whole building, I think would trigger the code stuff to
Oh, for sure,
redo.
if we were gonna add to the system.
Right,
Right.
same thing, to redo the whole electrical system to make it updated and not look like the panel in the 37 building. Right.
So I'm trying not to step on anybody's thing, but I
Sorry for-
think that, and
Sorry,
again, I think that all of Truex's plans about taking the walls down to fix anything. So that's what triggered.
Okay,
All their plans were
Maybe.
taking the walls
Okay.
down first. And so if our plans aren't taking the walls down first, maybe we can start that. Not gonna move.
well, just a question back to Sean. And again, I know that 2 meetings ago there, you shared with us your priority, which I wrote down. And we're talking about breaking out into groups, and I'm okay with that, but in the interest of not wasting time. You said that you're waiting for the state, and I just want to make sure, are they gonna come back with what they think are the priorities?
So the state paid for a study to be done by this Veritas
Right.
company. So they went through everything that I think UX went through, maybe not to the degree that they did. And they come back with the results in order of what they think this school needs to work on, priority number one, priority number two. priority number 3.
Okay, I thought that's what I understood. So I'm just saying, so we break out into groups tonight. And we have a priority group. And we write down, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 2 weeks from now, I guess my next question is, do you know when you expect those results back?
I would say within a month tops.
Okay, because then that was my main question, because then again, I do feel like, we're on our third meeting and we're continually talking about spacing needs, I mean, we all agree as far as what the school needs. We may not ever agree on how we're gonna get there to address it, but I feel like we're kind of spinning our wheels, and I like the word action, like Katie said. At some point, we need to take action. So in the interest of tonight, and I'm fine, we can break out into groups and stay here at 9 o'clock. I don't care. I have no place to go tonight, but I'm just saying, so
You'll be alone.
right, so we sit here and we write all this stuff down, and then a month from now, or 2 weeks from now, you get the state report back, or that committee report. And we've listed 5 and they've listed 5 others. I think we all do agree that the air situation needs to be addressed, and that may be their first priority. So that.
I almost guarantee everything we've talked about tonight is gonna be on there, and in prior meetings is gonna be on that list.
Okay.
And I don't think we have to, when we get their list, say the number 1 is sprinkler. Number 2 is air, number 3 is electrical. I don't know that we have to remediate those in their level, you know what I mean? We can mix it up and pick whatever we want.
And I would say heating controls are a pretty big deal, even if they don't hit their list, because it currently lives at about 80 degrees in the 37 building, and it's either 80 degrees or 50 degrees or colder right now.
That's what it used to be like when we were in that.
Oh, well, that's no hope for me.
All right,
Mary had her hand up.
Mary Mitch.
I just had, couple thoughts. One was, I was thinking back when I first went through, we given a little tour. And all the emphasis was really put on the older buildings, that there was, lots and lots of problems. And I was wondering, in the Truex, in their analysis, did they by any chance give any breakdown cost wise? I mean, they gave you a total, but what it would be, for the 37 and the 57, like the 57 seems like a total disaster, the way it's like, everywhere. And then, the 37 is there's just been ignored. So that sounds like all the number 1 priority things might be on those 2 areas. And I come back to the question, is it worth putting that money into those 2 areas?
Depending on the structure.
It's a great question, and I will try to answer it.
No, I didn't expect that,
No, it's just, I'm getting glared at.
I know you want to, but I don't know, it's premature, because really, I think what's gonna happen is the pricing is going to dictate the priority. So we're deciding all of these things, but when it comes back, we're gonna have to get pricing, it will all depend. And we could probably do a combination of chipping at it, a bond, a
It's all-
grant.
All 3 of them.
Yeah.
I think our solution is not one thing,
Yeah,
and I think our solution is not 2 things.
no.
And I think that,
It's
and
gonna be,
I'm gonna go ahead and say, in the 37, 57 building, our solution is to get as close to code as we can without making any triggers and spending the least amount of money possible on those buildings, because they're not in our 50-year plan or our 30-year plan. And what is in our 50-year plan and 30-year plan is what we have to plan for. And if that's, that is if it's to start anew somewhere with a small amount that can be then strategically planned for, be added on to, maybe. Depending on how long those buildings last.
depends.
Right, so if we were to break into a group and one of the groups had Sean in it, how many times would you say air handler? In those groups? Like, and anybody else started talking, would you cut them off and say air handler? So I don't, like, this is the first point, I'm not sure we need to break into that group tonight. About what is our priority mechanical need in the building.
Maybe I know, we've heard from Sean on that, we know what that is.
All right, I'm gonna go to Kate, and then,
I think that.
well, I'm skipping you because I can. And
I think we're gonna break into groups, it needs to be about, not necessarily about the code, because I think it makes sense to wait to hear about the grant before we make any decisions about that. The discussion should be around planning for the space. Like what action steps we could take towards making a plan towards what are we gonna do about the space? Because Mark's already taking an action about the codes in these grants, so we should wait on that before deciding anything else. The discussion is about what space makes the most sense, where could it be, what size does it need to be, what group of students or activity does it make sense to put in there? Those are the kind of things that I would be curious of what everybody is thinking.
What the community wants.
What the
to invest
community
in.
wants to
And those
invest
are
in.
two separate groups that even working outside of this meeting, people
Yeah.
could be working on as well. So I think that is a big component that we need to look at, is what the community wants.
Okay. What is,
Wait, Dave,
I'm sorry,
That's good.
Go for it, Dave, sorry.
Katie brought this up a long time ago, about the action plans. What if we had subgroups, which is, so you'll have a pre-K kindergarten group, maybe, and so they would discuss the needs. Let's say Ms. Welch had that and discuss the needs of all that. And then you had let's say a code group, and then community outreach group, and we met at the beginning of the meetings and then report back findings to the entire group.
What are you saying again? I'll write it down.
So we started out with a lot of discussion on pre-K.
Mhm.
And then it just kind of went around to, it just dissolved into everything else.
It always does.
And so if there was a controlled discussion in a separate room with these people are going to work on the pre-K issues. And these people are going to work on code issues or community outreach. Other things like that. Are there groups that we have the space where we could meet in smaller groups.
If I could make a counter proposal. In that breaking up into groups, but we all work on the same thing, which is the thing I think that's holding us back quite a bit. Rob's always been on this horse for a while. We need a 30-year strategic plan for what we're going to be as a school. And how we can build for that. I don't think that we have a good idea of that. The whole point of this committee is that we're a cross-section of this community. So we should be able to have discussions about what we want for the future of this school and what we want to prioritize and every step that we take and every action that we're deciding for. I think that those discussions will be a little bit easier to have in a smaller group. And once we have a 30-year plan, then we can start to break out into very specific groups that are doing research on code, building, all that type of particular thing. But I don't think that we have a really good idea now of what we want this school to look like in 30 years.
So that's what Katie's saying as well.
Yeah, I believe it would be good if we had a meeting that would just be on with a facilitator, with a background in that.
I'm coming back to facilitators, still based on that everything that gets said to me, I feel it's my turn to talk, but it's not always my turn to talk, and I've got to shut up. But I need somebody else to be doing the pointing. And so I think that we're gonna be at the point now where a facilitator makes sense to lead that discussion. And it's gotta be somebody that doesn't have a stake in any way. Everybody in this room has a stake.
Yeah.
So I think, and we've had this discussion previously about a facilitator, and there was a couple of them that got mentioned. Somebody might go, just come in here and just, instead of refuting ideas or talking about ideas, and just write them down and put them in different areas and departments, so that I can be part of the discussion and not in the way of some of the discussion and leading some of the rest of it. So I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, it was just a quick question. I know 2 weeks ago, Rob had mentioned about, possibly if we were gonna add some classrooms, the spot out back where the buses go, and I know it's only been 2 weeks, so. Has anybody had a chance to look into that? And if you
That's the
have,
picture that circulated.
That's.
well, I saw the modular, I was thinking more of regular size.
You think,
I saw the picture you passed around.
I mean, it's doable because that was where, the second. Yeah, the second building, that's, so it's doable, and they mapped that all out as far as where our property
It's in the-
are
it's in the
and stuff, so
report.
there's.
Okay.
I think the reason Sean didn't put it for more of a temporary structure is because of the generator and the stuff out there.
Yeah.
Not. But if we were gonna do something, it's doable, and that's.
And
That's
there's
been
a couple-
vetted a little bit, but.
Couple suggestions I mean, we could go outside the town to get a facilitator. That would probably cost us money. We've had, feel bad, I forgot his name, the guy that usually moderates town,
oh, he doesn't want to do it.
he doesn't. Okay, another guy I thought of, well, and he has done town hall in the past, or town meeting day, and he also was a former school board member.
Oh, Terry?
Terry Hoffman. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
obviously, he's got a stake.
He got a stake.
because he's- Yeah, but I mean, I don't, unless we go outside the town, I don't know if we're gonna get anyone to come in free.
We've got, it's a KANELL. But as led, the energy group in a strategic plan. And the train station.
That would be good.
And she is a journalist, as you know, and would be good for this. And I asked her and she said, yeah. And that was about $100. We're gonna do each of those.
Yeah, I think it's some facilitators.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
$1,000 from the.
I can ask her.
So I would ask the group if Rob has approached Beth Canal
Mhm.
about doing this, and she'd be able to do it for a low number that. you pay, everybody chips in $8. Like everybody shows up and chips in $8 and we got there.
Well, is that, or is that something the school board is?
Let's go with that.
Yeah.
They collect $8 in the way out the day.
They take the lead. It's not to come in and take the lead.
I can ask my wife to have a bake sale.
No, I mean, I can fundraise the money real quick if you guys, if the school didn't want to pay for it, I can fundraise the money real fast. So I think that was the consensus, yeah, that would be great for one of our upcoming meetings. And like I said, we need to know what we're doing. I'm gonna go to John and then Tim.
This is, because I'm old, I have memory going back quite a bit, and I was thinking about what you were saying about land. I remember being involved in something in the late 80s. In which community members were getting together, and a lot of this discussion is similar to what we're talking about here. Where is the school going, what's going on, and all that stuff. I'm just asking, I have no clue if CCSU has a report from the 80s that might detail some of the things that are going in, and whether that, if it exists at all, would help. It was, I remember meeting in Toby Balvey's office, and Toby was there, yeah, Galvani was there. I don't remember who else, but there were several meetings going across with citizens, breaking out in groups and looking at the future of the school and what was going on. And I never saw any report. I don't have a copy of it, and I don't even know if it exists, but I do remember going through that process. So I'll throw that out, and maybe it exists in some shelf in there, and you may want to just burn it if it's there. I don't know, but
I'll ask my brother.
See if they're close.
yeah.
It's,
If anybody has it,
it's
yeah.
kind of disaster though, sometimes when you go in there. But he knows where things are.
I know he does, and his memory is there, and he could always say, John is, not right.
Right, and Tim?
So the school that I work at just went through this process of creating a mission and vision. And when they did it, they had a facilitator. They had a company that helped to drive the work, because when you're creating a vision for the future, it's all encompassing, because it's not just the where do you want your building to be, it's what do you want your community to look like, what do you want education to look like within your, and so you're back at the point where you're gathering stakeholders and gathering information and creating a whole nother sort of assessment. And so I think, you know, and the other part of that is it's not a 30-year plan or a 50-year plan. It's a vision for where you're going and how you get there. And at the end, you come out with this is what we're doing this year, this is what we're doing next year.
You get an action plan.
You have an action plan with specific steps, and when you fall behind, it's there, it's in writing, and you look at it, and it's part of your strategic plan as you move forward. And I think we absolutely should have one as a school, but I think also you need to be prepared to invest in somebody who knows how to do that and to make sure you're considering all of the different pieces and parts. And again, that's one of those that there are companies out there who specialize in creating that and training your people in how to upkeep it once it's created. But to know that that's we need to be able to do that, but I don't think we should be sitting around reinventing the wheel for how to come up with a vision for what this should look like and who we need to talk to come up with a 30-year plan. I think it's a bigger task than that.
I think you could spend years doing that.
Yeah, that's
and-
more of a school board.
And again, like there's people who, that's what they do. And so, you know, and I know we sort of got criticized for hiring someone that's what they do to give us some answers about our building. But there's a reason those companies exist, and there's a reason that they're so hired, and it's because what they do is valuable and they do it well. And so, yes, we should be having those conversations, but that conversation can be shortened really quickly by bringing in somebody who then says, now do this, or.
And they know exactly all the codes and the
Well-
signs and stuff like that.
Well, and it's not necessarily about that. When we're talking about a vision, it's more like, okay, let's talk about your curriculum and where that's going. Let's talk about your community and where that's going. And yeah, you need to survey your people, and here are the 20 questions that need to be on your survey, because they've already developed them. And so rather than trying to sort of figure out what that is, you know, there's.
Do you know how much that costs?
I don't, but I've already sent an email. So I know the guy who headed the committee within the school, and so I will. Well, no, I know the guy who did it within the school, so I know who the point person lead was very well within the school, and so I will have a conversation. I work very closely with him. I will have a conversation with him, and see what I can find out about that, but I think that that's really what you're looking at when you're looking at a long-term plan.
As I agree with Tim and Mary and Rob, we talked about a nonprofit. I can't remember the name of it, but schools are members of the nonprofit and they have access to services like strategic planning, enrollment reports and projections and all sorts of different things that help with these sorts of projects. So that could be another, plus it's a nonprofit, so I'm expecting it's not going to be as expensive as a private firm doing this. So if you all want, I went to the high school that the board chair he's from the high school I went to in Maine, so just coincidentally, when I looked it up, I'm like, oh, that's from my hometown. So I could, if you want me to, I could reach out and see what those costs could be too, and what they provide, similar to Tim, just as we have something to compare it to. That would be helpful.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm gonna go. A lot of what we're talking about now is this is all meeting planning, which we don't have to do in person under open meeting law. We can discuss which one of these that we think makes the most sense to bring in if we want to waste our money. And we say when we're planning our meetings, so we don't have to have these people come in and that can go around. It can be an agenda item. We can do that as homework. Look at some of these things the next time we meet. So if she has that information to put forth and then we send it to the group as something to consider for the next thing, it can be done as homework. Or we could also have Beth, if she comes in and we could present these options to her, maybe one of these options makes more sense when she has a better idea what the group is.
Sure.
We could use the $100 consult to see if it makes more sense to use a higher consult.
Yeah.
And we could plan for a limited scope facilitator to decide, to help us decide whether the scope at which we need a larger facilitator. But we have some idea of the cost if we waited until our next meeting to delve further into this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sir, Bruce?
Yeah, I like your proposal. I think maybe for the next meeting, if that her name is available. I mean, obviously, so we'll have to schedule our meeting around her availability. But
I think she's
if you can facilitate it and get us headed in some direction. If we break out of the groups that night, fine, or if we just, you know, if we got the flip charts or whatever somebody talked about, we're starting.
I think, yeah, if she can put pen to a board and just have a better idea of what, and then we can just, once we see, we can compartmentalize some of the ideas.
Right.
Rather than there's just everything floats in the air with no.
Exactly.
Okay. So I think what I'd like to do now, if we can, is move down off of building option and on to scheduling of ongoing meetings and when our next meeting is gonna be, and what our next meeting is gonna be. I think we have an idea that our next meeting is now gonna, if we can approach her, if she's available, get a hold of Beth and have our next meeting facilitated by Beth Cannell for an idea. And our agenda items, one of them was going to be the long-term plan for the school with the facilitator. And then was there anything else that you would like to expressly have on that agenda?
We're gonna do breakout groups and all.
But we were gonna do breakout rooms tonight, but I don't think that makes sense. We're gonna move to the next meeting. And we could do breakout groups with the facilitator and we could be given assignments by the facilitator, like.
Yeah.
There you go. And did you want to do breakout groups to start? I don't know if you want to do breakout. Groups
Well,
to
it'd be
start.
better to get directions from this person.
I think that if all these ideas up in the air, I can let her catch them
Yes,
and without,
it might consist of a whole bunch of those kinds of things with us doing
That's
post-its.
exactly what
Trying to,
he likes to do.
yeah, figure
Well, I
out
think
how,
that the notes
I'm
from-
thinking.
The notes from tonight, the ideas that we threw out tonight, I assume. So maybe we take the list of Molly's. Get it to her in advance so that she can digest it and then come prepared with saying, okay, this is what I recommend you guys to break out. Then we're not spending 45
Pre-set up,
minutes trying to rehash everything that we just talked about. tonight.
Or you could meet with her, she'll probably want her own agenda, you could, or subgroup could meet
Well,
with
we'll
her.
get together with her.
Yeah, maybe that would be a good, because she probably would want to set her own agenda, I would imagine.
is anybody else especially interested in that? That would want to join that little tiny subcommittee that just formed without that, like, I don't.
It will
John.
probably involve breakfast at the end.
There you go.
That was favorite.
You get-
Oh, it's gonna involve breakfast. I might-
That's right. Let me-
Gonna come with a whiskey sour.
Yeah.
Could we talk to someone at the state that would give us more information? Maybe that's a task for Sean about like, if they're like a head fire marshal who like knows all about that kind of stuff, but could give us some more details about exactly what we can do without triggering that fix it all trigger. It might be nice to have there's gotta be a person. If they would come in and yell at us for doing something wrong, then we must be able to go find them and get some information from them.
Pat McLaughlin is your head fire marshal for the state. He also heads up the fire, the hazardous materials. And he lives right in Lincolnville.
He's a great guy.
So, yeah, he's a good guy. But I guarantee you, if he comes in here.
Yeah, tell that was the-
Might not- Now we might want to meet him down.
There's that old saying, be careful what you ask for.
Yeah.
We'll have him.
So is it, you want to follow up on that for us?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, now. Now the schedule. So I can speak for quite a few members of the school board that we have a lot of meetings coming up. There's a school vacation, but school board members have a lot of meetings coming up, trying to show the budget to our town and the people that go. I've got a meeting on the 20th, a meeting on the 21st, I've got a meeting on the 23rd. The whole next week after that is vacation, not everybody's gonna be here, everybody that can should go someplace warm. And then when we come back to town meeting, and then after town meeting, there may be different board members. So we're gonna have, after town meeting is the 7th, we're reorganizing on the 9th. So I'm looking at meeting maybe the week after March the 9th.
I'm out of the state that week, if you want me here.
Yeah, I am.
The 15th to the 20th,
I think it's critical.
I'm not
Okay, so we're gonna start throwing out meeting dates now, and they're gonna be in March, and they may be in the month, and this is gonna give time for some of the reports to come in. Maybe some other stuff to happen, so it looks like if I'm looking at, I gotta get my dog, gotta get a haircut on the 14th. But, so I'm looking at the week of the 19th to 20th, that one, 19th, 20, 21.
Maybe that's a little late tonight.
I'm in for the 22nd, if anybody else,
Yep, that works.
Have you gone yet? Have you back?
March.
I
So
am back, but I think my son has a hockey.
that's the 22nd.
Which for 3 seconds in there.
This room seems to work well, I think, in terms of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like
Yeah, I
this.
like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't change a thing. This room's perfect. Let me even complain.
This side, that would be so.
March 22nd. March 22nd. Now, do
Who
we,
needs a window?
Clayton, do we want to plan for that regardless of whether Beth can make it or not?
So overrated.
So I think,
With an outdoor.
I think that we can plan for that, but if she's somehow not available, we'll have to replan, and we can replan via email. We can replan with the group, but if we set a date, then we'll have, then we can try to fit her, it's a month and a half, it's a month and a week. So we hope she's available.
Wait, and are you, I mean, I understand that she'll facilitate, are you hoping that if we break out into breakout rooms, I should chat with the rest of the middle school team and say, hey, we're gonna use your rooms?
So,
Want spaces potentially?
I mean, we use the cafeteria in the library as 2 other rooms, so we're close enough to the cafeteria in the library.
Yeah.
Yes.
Smaller.
Perfect. Okay.
And so we would just need, if you put 6 people at a table in the cafeteria, you're not causing any trouble. If you put 6 more in the library, then you have 1 room and the two spaces that sit empty. So we good on that?
Yeah.
So that's, we have an idea what the agenda is. There's no public, everybody you're on the committee. You're not the public.
March 20.
Future agenda items we talked about, and then I would look for a board member to let us adjourn. I got, can I get a second for adjournment from a board member? I got a second, all in favor?
Never.
No, it's fine.
It's always, I'm always.
I'm not being adjourned, it is 7:34.
Very